Hi there and welcome to this video on using Teams, which we've developed especially for teachers. Why have we done that, I guess is the starting point. Both Paul and I, the directors of the business, have children who have been learning through Teams, and we are aware of the pressure that teachers are under to keep children engaged in their learning and engaged with each other. And Teams is a really powerful tool to do that. Does it replace the classroom? I don't believe it does, but it has a place in learning. So what gives me the right, I guess, to give you any insight into Teams? Fortunately, in learning and development for corporate world, we've been using online learning for some time now. So the virtual classroom has been around probably for 10 years. We've been using it in anger for around about 5. But clearly over the last 12 months, the demand for our services has risen dramatically. So it only felt right that we could share some of the things with you that we've been doing with all our clients. And our clients have been using Teams, Adobe Connect, Zoom, WebEx, which is the Cisco platform, and a number of others. So some of the things here are best practice, but specifically here we're concentrating on Teams because that's the one we've both seen is most relevant. What we're going to cover, I'll keep this brief, we're going to look at the chat function, the whiteboard facility, using breakout rooms should you want to, presenting within Teams, and then screen sharing outside of Teams and the difference between the two. It's quite remarkable. I hope you enjoy it, I hope you find it useful, and I'd love any feedback and see if we can help you any further at all.
Hi, I'm Paul, the Ops Director at On Track Learning. Before we look at using Teams, let's look at the tech that you and the pupils could be using. In the top left, you'll see the ideal setup for a teacher, a desktop or a laptop with an additional monitor. Using this setup, you can share the lesson on one screen and keep an eye on the pupils on the other. Underneath this, we have the view from a laptop. We've used a laptop for this session as we think it will be the most popular option. Above me, you'll see what Teams looks like on a tablet. And finally, a mobile phone. We would not recommend teachers to use a mobile phone as you don't get a lot of the functionality we are about to cover. It's always worth checking with the pupils what device they are using, as this will have an impact on the experience for them as well. Desktop, laptop and tablet are all fine. However, we have found that on mobile phones, some of the tech can be a bit hit and miss. So they may not be able to see the whiteboard or put the hands up, and they definitely can't go into a breakout room. The option for the breakout room would be to make the main room a breakout room for anybody on a mobile phone. So let's hand back to Andy as he prepares for his lesson.
Hi there, the first thing I wanted to show you on the Teams login is as you open the Teams, you may have done this already, but always the best thing to check that you've got the right setup for your computer audio. So I use a headset, so I need to make sure that for the speaker and the microphone it's set up for external headphones. If you unplug that, it's always worth checking that it's set up for an external mic and external speakers. This way it stops an awful lot of feedback going through. You'll hear when people speak, it goes back into the microphone. This cuts that piece out if it's possible to do so. This is a normal Apple headset that came with my phone. And the camera setting, which is the normal HD camera, which is the one I already have. The only other thing to point out whilst we're here is you could use your background filter. So my background's not too bad, lovely shot of the window there, but should I want to, I can blur it out. And if there's something private and personal in your background that you can't get rid of, or you just don't want other people to see, you could blur it out. I'm going to leave mine unblurred, and I'm going to join the meeting with this setup. Before we get any participants on board, which we'll see under the Participants tab here, I thought it worth sharing with you the two different ways of sharing information on the screen. Let me show you the way one, which is the one that keeps you in most control. Using the share content option here, the options we get are our desktop, which is anything we've got on our screen, a certain window, which I'm going to come back to. It's one way of showing PowerPoint. We know we've got the whiteboard, which again I'll come back to, and then we've got this PowerPoint, so we can upload a PowerPoint document from our computer and share that. Now I've uploaded one already, but I thought I'd take you through the process anyway, which is this one here I want to share. So I'm going to click open. It'll probably tell me I've already uploaded it, or it'll upload it again. Let's see what it does. There we go, it already exists, but I'll replace it because I've made some amendments to it since I last used it. And we can see here
that it will load in the middle of the screen. So the benefit of this type of share, because it's not a screen share, is we're going to share something that will allow us to keep the cameras along the bottom of the screen, and we'll also be able to keep the other functions that I'm going to show you later, such as the participant, the chat, and the hands up on the screen. So here we have our welcome to Teams facilitation for teachers. As you can see, I can navigate through using the forwards and the backwards buttons. I can make sure nobody else can move it. So stop them. They can only see now what I can see, as otherwise they'd be able to navigate themselves. The key thing, as I mentioned earlier, is I can have the chat function open at the same time. And I'm going to show you a little bit later on the importance of the chat function, which we can keep open here. And then along the bottom of the screen, as the participants arrive, we'll see them popping up here. So I'll keep as many people on camera as possible. It's not infinite, but as many as possible. So that's one way of sharing your screen, and I'll come back to that one a little bit later. Everybody ready, guys? Thank you. So, show conversation. I'm going to move us over to the chat function, which will open up here on the right-hand side. And in our session today, we're talking about the wives of King Henry VIII. So, I showed you how to share content earlier. I'm going to show you how to use content and the chat function to just keep people engaged. I'm sure it's something you're doing already, but beforehand, my system's just going to upload it now. We'll just let that happen. And as you'll see, as the PowerPoint uploads in the middle, it'll probably ask me to replace one because I've already done a version of this. These cameras move down to the bottom. And as we mentioned earlier, you can only see 4, so Alex is off camera. But if Alex was to say something, we'd be able to bring him on camera. Alex, why don't you come off mute and say hello? Thanks, Alex. We can see now Alex's window has moved along. Though my camera, as you can see, it's working quite slow as it uploads the presentation. So Alex moved along and Paul's fallen off the end there. Alex, you can go back on mute, thank you. So guys, on the chat, when we're thinking about King Henry VIII and his wives, on the chat please, you'll see a question come up in the main screen. Who were the wives of Henry VIII? There were 6 altogether. I'd like you to put as many as you can recall, one at a time, in the chat function, please. Who were the wives of Henry VIII? I can see Paul's typing there, he's going in quick. I can see my team's icons flashing up there, so I know there are messages about to come through onto the main chat board. Catherine of Aragon, Anne of Cleves, oh, he's on fire today. Anne Boleyn, you'd think he knew what we were going to cover in today's session. Alex, well done, Catherine of Aragon. Come on, have we got anything from yourself, Louise or Jack? I can see you both typing. I can see that Louise has put something in there as well. So as a facilitator or as a teacher, you'll get notifications of the chat popping up because it's going into your Teams messages as well. But I like to just keep them down, and I can see now. Thank you, Alex. Catherine Howard. Sorry. So that's how we would use the presentation and drive the chat, and we would do that an awful lot. If we were to move through the session, I'll do that in the next session. We'll look at the next one we're going to look at, guys, just so you're aware, will be, so you can prepare your brains and start thinking about it, the fates of King Henry VIII's wives. So what happened to them all? I'll come back to you because we're going to do that exercise on the whiteboard. So guys, you've been considering what the fates of King Henry VIII's wives are. I'm going to ask you to write them on a whiteboard. So I'm going to share a whiteboard with you all. When it comes up, you'll see a little graphic at the top of some pens. Pick a coloured pen, and when you can, write on the whiteboard the fates of King Henry VIII's wives. So we'll just wait for that whiteboard to open up. We'll take a little bit of time there. Guys, we know who King Henry VIII's wives are. As I said, on the whiteboard, using whichever colour pen you wish to, pick a pen and tell me what were the fates of King Henry VIII's wives. Whilst you're doing that, I'll add the title of that at the top. But for my guys, I always say to them, if you've got a question or something you want to add, or you need to leave for any reason, because we know people are all at home, please raise your hand. So as a test, I'm going to ask my pupils to all raise their hand at the same time now on the count of 3. On a 1, 2, 3, raise your hands, please. We'll see when we get hands raised that everybody gets a yellow box. Now the box does disappear, as we can see there. It goes one after the other. But we can see in the participant module that we've got 4 icons, which in this case, if we go over here to the participant module, it'll show 4 hands being up. So Alex and Louise, I'd like you to put your hands down, please. Thank you. Let's, for example, say Paul had a question, then I can come to Paul, and there's 2 things we can do with Paul. I can spotlight him so that for everybody, he'll take the screen and be able to ask his question. And this just allows us to move our focus to the person who's got the question. So there's Paul with his question. And I would ask him, I'm not going to do it for the sake of this video, but would ask him to come off mute and ask his question. And I can still see that he has a question to answer, and so does Jack. So Paul would ask his question, and then I might go around the group and answer that, in which case I will stop spotlighting Paul. Fairly straightforward with a stop spotlighting. And Paul will go and rejoin the class. So in essence, we're bringing Paul to the front of the class, or we're all physically turning around to look at him, which is what we do in the class. And now that he has asked his question, I'll lower his hand for him, and that leaves us with Jack with his hand up. And you'll see Jack's jumped to the top of the participant module because it puts people's hands in the order that they've asked. So Jack's the only one left. Jack, you can lower your hand. Thank you very much. That's how we use the hands up function. So another way of keeping people engaged, either reactively, they need us, or proactively, we ask them to engage with us. Let's move on to look at meeting rooms. I want to break my pupils or students up to do some group work together. So I'm going to ask Alex and Paul to go in a meeting room and tell me which fate became of which wife. So we had beheaded on the whiteboard earlier, which of Henry VIII's wives were beheaded, so on and so forth. So I want you as groups to match up the fates with the wives. I'm going to start breakout rooms by selecting the breakout room icon, and it asks me how many rooms I want. Well, I know I need 2, so I'm going to ask for 2 rooms, and I want to manually put people in them. If you use automatically, it'll do it for me, 2 people per room. I've already told people who they're working with. So, to put the participants in the room, quite straightforward. We click the top 2. I can't recall who I said I would put with who. Louise, will you come off mute and remind me who you're working with, please?
I'm working with Jack.
Thank you ever so much. That's what I thought. So I shall put you, Louise, you can go back on mute. Thank you. I shall put you and Jack in meeting room 1. And select all and assign Paul and Alex to meeting room 2. Now, when I click start rooms here, the system takes a little bit of time, but there will be a purple banner, guys, that's going to come up on your screen. It's going to give you a 10-second warning to go into breakout rooms. When you see that, I need you to count down in elephants, 10 elephants, 9 elephants, 8 elephants, and so on. You'll probably move on the 2nd elephant, maybe even the 3rd. There's Paul going to his breakout room. And there's everybody in their breakout rooms, and we can see them here. I've got a lot of trust in these guys to do the work that I've asked them to do. As you would if this was in the classroom, you'd walk around to the different groups. Certainly if they're in different rooms, you would go. So that's exactly what I need to do. So if I want to go and check on in Louise and Jack, I can simply join the room. What's going to happen, you'll see on my screen, it'll move me into the meeting room, and I can check that they haven't just gone out and left and that they're doing some work. Hi guys, everything going okay in the room? Good stuff, thank you. Now, it's quite important here that I click return so I go back to the main meeting room as opposed to leaving the meeting. So I'll click return. Guys, I'll leave you to it. There's about 4 minutes of the exercise left. And I can do exactly the same with the other meeting room. So if I want to go and see the guys in meeting room 2, I can do that. Let's close the meeting rooms and bring them back. It'll again work quite slowly, so you've got to give teams time, and it'll give them a 10-second warning. So nothing's fast when we talk about using the breakout or meeting rooms, but it's just about us having patience and letting the system do its work. And there we have everybody back. Guys, I'd like to give you the thumbs up on the screen if you're ready to share the fates of King Henry VIII's wives and the names of people whose fate aligned with them. Give me the thumbs up if you're ready to do that. Thanks, Jack, you're a bit slow there. And so on and so forth. So that's how I would use the meeting or breakout rooms in Teams. Just before I go off this screen then, we've worked our way along the functions here. There are more things you can do, but we'll have a look at the back end of these things on another recording, and I could turn my camera off and go on mute, and you're probably very familiar with these buttons by now. Best practice is, so that these guys can't pop back into this meeting again, rather than me leave the meeting, I'm going to say thank you everybody for attending. I hope you have a very good afternoon, and I'll see you at our next classroom, and I'll click end meeting. Big waves, guys. And that will end the meeting for everybody.